Oops. Sorry, I need to move this down a little bit. Don't have the height of my previous speakers. No, but good morning, everybody. And for our Hispanohablantes, muy buenos días. This really is a tremendous honor for me to be here today to speak before you all. Many of you I consider friends. I've had that privilege of working with you and working alongside you, more importantly, over the last several months that I've been back here in Arkansas. And the rest of you, I look forward to hopefully getting to know you more. I'm grateful for your interest in this topic. And please know I hope to keep the comments brief so that we can actually have a dialogue here. I know that immigration is a big issue. Working with Hispanics a big issue, and I would love to be able to know what some of your questions and concerns are with this. And then to reiterate with Alan, I do want to send a special thanks to Zaira Ray sitting next to me as somebody that we were connected through a mutual partner, Seis Puentes, an organization, a nonprofit working in North Little Rock that is also doing some tremendous work with our Latino community up there. And just since we connected, really she has been, I think, a pure model of the type of work that we had hoped and set out to do, and she has exceeded expectations in every way, as is our programming, and I'm really excited that you all are going to have that opportunity to meet her and hear her speak, at least briefly, as I have had that privilege of getting to know her and work alongside her these last several months. But as was stated, my name is Mireya Reith, and I know that is a complicated name, so please, no worries. They're both actually strong immigrant names. My first name, Spanish background, but tied to my Mexican family, and my last name, a German last name, which is actually my father's background, and that also immigrant heritage that I bring to this work with pride. But I have to say that I never expected when I moved here to Arkansas in 1992 that I would have this privilege of speaking before you all today, one, at a school named after Bill Clinton, who had just been elected at that time to his first year of presidency. So I don't believe this entity was even in his mind at that time when he was coming into office, or we knew that this school and this opportunity would be presented here for our students, both here in Arkansas and internationally. But then also that I would be speaking on this issue of immigration, because I will admit, having moved to Arkansas in 1992 and growing up in Fayetteville, Arkansas, this was not part of my reality. I am the daughter of a Mexican immigrant from the state of Hidalgo, Mexico, and our family has always taken pride in that heritage and made sure we spent summers in Mexico learning Spanish alongside my cousins and my family members, made sure we had those cultural connections, but that was not something that was part of my reality growing up. I didn't have any classmates that spoke Spanish. At that time, I didn't realize, but I was learning English alongside my mother, both of us in that same process together. And actually, people were so confounded by my Mexican accent in English, I got sent to speech therapy school, thinking it was a physical defect as opposed to me going through that English learning process with the rest of my family. And also looking a little different from other folks, I will admit, that kind of preceded this whole movement of bullying and anti-bullying that I'm grateful we're seeing now in the schools, but kids always weren't so nice to those that look so different. So for me to know that I can be speaking on this topic about heritage and something that's so important to me, I think is a reflection of something my parents instilled in me, which was strength. Strength and appreciation for something that really has guided me in so many ways in life, and that is that diversity is an asset. And it's not something that we should shy away from, but that's something that we should embrace in all aspects. But I don't think they had any sense when they taught me that lesson that I would make a career out of it, or that I could even make a career out of it. And I think even today when I talk with my parents about what I do, they still every so often pause. Now, what exactly is it that you do? So I'm going to do my best to sort of break it down for you all here. But I do want to couch in the context that this work that I do here actually builds off an international career that I was very fortunate to have. I did spend 14 years working abroad. My work took me to 5 different continents around the world in the field of democracy democracy promotion. But I will say that when you're talking about democracy and the ideals of democracy and striving for democracy, you learn something, and you learn something pretty quickly, and that is change is possible, which is maybe something you don't necessarily expect to hear. I'm not saying change is easy. I'm not saying change comes overnight, but from my travels and my privileges of getting to work alongside activists around the world, I was able to learn and see that with commitment, with some hard work, with some training and support, change is possible. So where my travels and my work for most of my career actually did take me away from Arkansas, Arkansas was always home. And my family was always here, and I came back in 2010 to be with my family. And 2010 was actually an important year for Arkansas for several different reasons. One, we were completing another decennial then, the first decennial of this century, and that decennial actually put Arkansas in terms of the third highest growth state in immigrants in the country, looking over a 20-year period. A lot of folks don't realize that for Arkansas. North Carolina has been leading that list just above us, and just above us as well as Georgia, but then comes Arkansas, a state that never before had been associated with immigrants, now leading the country and being monitored by national policymakers for being third in growth. But 2010 was also another important year because it was an election year. And given that within my work in democracy promotion and political development, my specific interest was always connecting marginalized communities with political processes. So the combination of growth within our immigrant community plus this election gave me a unique opportunity to get to work in terms of outreach with our Latino community in regards to our election. And one thing that I didn't expect, and I think those that worked with me didn't expect as well, was that that would actually be a tremendously big year for our Latino community in regards to our electoral participation. Here in Arkansas, we doubled the Hispanic vote in 2010. So in 2008, about 7,000 Hispanics voted and participated in that presidential election. In 2010, it was over 16,000 in just a 2-year period. That was tremendous, and it showed a growing awakening as well as interest, and what we saw, a huge potential in terms of work with our community and on some of these issues. So coming out of that election, obviously very excited, very passionate about the success, obviously still very passionate about my community home in Arkansas. I was approached by some leaders, local leaders, who also were working nationally on some of these issues through a movement called Reform Immigration for America, or RIFA. And they actually had a 4-year campaign here in Arkansas trying to connect local Arkansans with this national conversation around immigration reform, and realizing that if we were going to have sincere conversations about solutions to immigration reform in our broken system, then we needed folks from everybody, from all states, to be involved in that. And that in order to do that, we needed to have more presence, more training, more knowledge, and more awareness on the ground. And it was those individuals involved with that campaign that planted this seed of this idea of Arkansas United Community Coalition to me and starting this nonprofit. I have to admit, again, growing up here in Arkansas, never had envisioned that I would start up a nonprofit someday. That was not something that had been on my list of things to do before I kicked the bucket, but it was a wonderful opportunity that was being presented before me, and around a wonderful mission that I really believed in, which was trying to bring greater equality, greater integration for all of our Arkansans, and now focusing on this newly emerged immigrant population. Now, with that, it did take us a moment, and we felt it was very important at that time to reflect, because there was active conversation going on in this state about immigration. And it was important for us to look economically at what was happening, but politically as well, and make sure that as we were thinking about this organization, as we were thinking about promoting equality for immigrants, how we might do so, and do so in a conscientious way for what was already going on. And so first we looked at the economy. And I know when we think of 2010, we're not thinking too good on the economy, especially at the national level. However, at that time, the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation had released information that looked specifically at immigration and how immigration tied to economics here in Arkansas. And we were all very surprised. Arkansas immigrants are contributing about $3 billion annually to our economy positively. And that was something that we thought was very strong. Arkansas immigrants were putting in more in taxes than essentially what they were taking out, which is something that I think a lot of folks wanted to understand better and were concerned with. And there was strong evidence of a very strong entrepreneurial base for immigrants here in Arkansas, and a base that was very actively, even in these tough economic times, giving something very positive to our Arkansas economy. We also looked at politics, and Arkansas politics, as you might imagine, wasn't fully independent of national politics going on that time in regards to immigrants. 2010, you might recall the Arizona law, SB 1070, for those of you that follow immigration, and that law being introduced and the conversation reemerging at that time that we do have a broken immigration system, and then whose role was it to fix it? Was it the federal government or was it the state government? And obviously the state of Arizona making a very strong belief and assertion through some of their leadership that they felt the state government had a role there in terms of fixing it. Well, that obviously tied into the upcoming elections in 2010. And even here in Arkansas, through groups like Secure Arkansas, you saw efforts of trying to bring some of those conversations into our debate here and seeing whether, and wanting to enlist from our folks here in Arkansas, whether that type of law is what Arkansans would get behind or be supportive. Thankfully, they didn't get enough signatures for the ballot initiative that year, but it was a conversation that was being entered here. And then at that time as well, for us, we got connected to the first time to the Friendship Coalition on the opposite end of that spectrum. And the Friendship Coalition being a coalition of leaders, of what we might call grass top leaders from across the state of Arkansas, who firmly believe that these conversations that were about being punitive to immigrants and looking purely at deportation were not in benefit of Arkansas, and that we needed to take a stand against it, and that these entities trying to bring folks together around these conversations. So looking at all those pieces, and again, us trying to reflect on this concept of how do we build equality, how do we build integration, for us we realized that those conversations couldn't be happening independently of what's happening in the economics or the political realm, but also that there was some timely opportunities coming here. Because in 2011, we had a state legislative session that saw the introduction of 12 anti-immigrant punitive measures. Measures, for example, that would have denied vaccinations to the youth of immigrant children, measures that would have made it illegal to transport individuals of undocumented status in their vehicles, laws that would have increased and given more powers to law enforcement for racial profiling and looking at individuals' race when stopping and detaining them, laws, what we call English-only laws, and not allowing for translation of materials and such. So very concerning things going on in that legislative session. Thankfully, none of those laws were passed, but it did demonstrate to us that we would have a full year and a half before the next legislative session, and maybe there was an opportunity that combining this conversation about equality and trying to promote equality, that we could also think about, well, what can we do to build the involvement of immigrants themselves around these conversations, or use these conversations in a way to build immigrant involvement. Because when we looked at this economic debate and we looked at this political debate, one thing that was concerning with us was not seeing enough immigrants speaking for themselves on these issues that were important to them. Again, very grateful for the coalitions and alliances that we've seen around these issues, but at the same time feeling that maybe, again, if we're talking about integration, if we're talking about building up equality, that there was a space here to help immigrants as well speak for themselves. And so with that, we started looking to other states, because we know here in Arkansas we're not the first ones that experience immigrant growth, that other states have had immigrant populations much more established than ours. And we asked them, well, how did you help get your immigrant community mobilized? How did you do that? And we got an interesting answer. Most of them said, well, we mobilized our community after bad laws came in. In Arizona, the anti-immigrant law was passed, and now we've seen unprecedented voter participation. Alabama, immigrants immigrants weren't even aware that those conversations were being discussed or that their identities were being discussed in the legislature until after it happened. Georgia, the same. They said that really, they found mobilization happened in terms of a reaction to the negative things that were happening, this conversation, this political debate that was going on. Well, here in Arkansas, as I said, these conversations have been happening, but we learned that many immigrants didn't even know that they were being discussed, just as was happening in other states. But unlike these other states, because of coalitions, because of alliances, these laws at this time hadn't been passed. So reaction wasn't going to work for us. And plus, we didn't feel that we should have to wait for reaction. Why should we wait for what we perceived as negative scenarios, especially when we know immigrants are benefiting $3 billion a year to our economy and are bringing other wonderful social and political aspects to our communities? Why should we wait for the worst to happen? What can we do that would be proactive is what the question we put out there. And really that was for us even an inspiration in how we came up with our name, Arkansas United Community Coalition. I know it's 4 words and 4 well-meaning words that put together sound all right. But for us, really what those words and what that name represented was about community engagement and really getting our immigrants engaged in communities. So now we knew we had to tackle this question on how do we help our immigrants become proactive. So I want to pause here and ask you all a question. How many of you have volunteered before? If you volunteered in any capacity for your community, for your church, a nonprofit, another organization, if you could please raise your hands. Okay. I would say that's the majority of the room. Now, I'd like you to reflect for a second. Think about why you volunteered. Can you think of any personal reasons that you volunteered for that initiative? Maybe you felt it would help your children. Maybe you felt it would help your neighbors. Maybe you felt that it was something that would help you and your circumstances, your personal interests. If you can think of a personal connection to the reason you volunteered, once again, please raise your hand. Okay. Again, that's the majority of everyone in the room. Now, that was the same questions we asked ourselves. Why do people volunteer? Why do they get engaged? And we came to that same conclusion. It's because they have a personal interest in what they're doing. They can see a personal benefit to them and their family and their neighbors in what they're doing. And we realized that if we were going to help immigrants become proactive, if we were going to try and target programs that would be geared toward proactive programs with immigrants, then we too had to be able to relate to them in terms of how this would be of personal interest to them. And now that sounds a lot easier than you would think, because in reality, it is a lot easier to stand up against something you don't like than to know what it is that you want, and to go through that decisive process of what it is that you want. And then add to that the barriers that many immigrants are facing here in Arkansas in regards to language, cultural barriers, uncertainty, sometimes fear because of maybe negative interactions they've had with other members of the community. All of these different things come together and add to those barriers of how do we transform how our communities are interacting. So that was our exciting period. We got to think through, okay, now what are these potential solutions? How are we going to address this? And we really came up with a two-prong approach. That if we were going to try and inspire immigrants to be proactive, we had to look at individuals and help empower individuals based at what they were, where they were at and what their interests were, but also that we had this opportunity around collaboration with all of these groups and entities that were already working with immigrants. And that's really what has led and guided what is the mission of AUCC in our work today. So our mission is to empower immigrants and their communities through organizing, coalition building, leadership development, and the promotion of immigrant civic engagements. And really, we have two tracks of work that we do that fall into this mission. One is that collaboration piece that I was talking about, that coalition building piece that we talk about. We actually wake up every day and think about who can we bring around the table and around what common interests that are tied with immigrants, and how can we get all of us to sit around the table and see how those common interests actually tie in with our policy process and the political issues being discussed here. And we realized there are a lot of service delivery organizations now working with immigrants. That is a tremendous development for the state and has been a support for the community, but they don't frequently talk with each other. And then there's allies, allies sometimes in the government, allies sometimes with the faith community, even in the corporate sector. We found that there were other groups that also recognized the value of immigration, but again, that there wasn't a whole lot of sitting around the table, working together around these conversations. And now coalition building is something I think we all talk about, that work in social justice, that work in these nonprofit issues, but it's a lot easier said than it's done. And the reality is coalition building takes time, and that's why we had decided from the get-go, well, this is something we want to spend some time on. We actually want to give some of our time because we know it takes that to help bringing people around the table around issues. And then the issues that we've come around for this first year have been, probably no surprise to you all, education. And for us, especially access to higher education. In recent polling with immigrants, but I think you'll find even within the context of this election, in the context of conversations going on, education frequently polls as one of the highest issues of importance to Americans, whether they're immigrants, non-immigrants, or otherwise. And we recognize that there are some significant barriers to immigrants getting to pursue higher education in the state of Arkansas and this country tied to their immigration status. And so we've been bringing together and supporting conversations around how we can get past those barriers and what we can do to support, especially our youth. Really believing that for us as a state, as Arkansas as a whole, to move forward, we need to be able to give all of our students a chance to achieve their potential, especially since we've been investing in them and supporting them all these years and along the way. Another coalition issue that emerged for us was on human and civil rights. And that's something that, again, a long history here in Arkansas, even referenced by Alan Leverett in his comments, something that has not been fully corrected, and I think most of us would realize and feel is not something that is fully offered and available to all residents here in Arkansas. And so we've been able to work with some very exciting coalitions that have included the African American community, our LGBTQ community, our faith community, women's rights groups, and other groups to have this conversation and how can we ensure that human and civil rights are being extended to all Arkansans living here. And with that as well, our interest in seeing those extended to immigrants and immigrant rights, especially in relation to the rise of programs that are encouraging enforcement-only deportation primarily of immigrants, especially in their context with government and law enforcement agencies. Some of these programs like 287G and Secure Communities. The final issue that we're working on in coalition is that issue on civic participation. So again, what brought me originally back to Arkansas and my passion and my engagement, my firm belief that everyone has a place in our political system and our real politics can achieve its potential until we have diverse voices around that table. And with civic participation, really we've looked at the whole gambit of trying to engage in federal policies that would allow for more individuals to get legal status through these conversations around family unity waivers, through these conversations on deferred action, through these conversations on prosecutorial discretion, all very legal terminology, legal programs, but that get at the gist that we have to recognize that there are individuals that are here, that there are families that are here, that they are working hard and contributing to our country, and it doesn't make us any sense to separate these individuals when we know we need them here, and our economy needs them here, and our employers are even saying we need them here. And so how can we go about, in a way here in Arkansas, to also try and contribute to those conversations so we can see those policies happen. But then we're also dealing with the citizenship issue. One thing that we learned in our process of our work here in Arkansas is 1/3 of Arkansas immigrants are legal permanent residents. 1/3, that's about 40,000 individuals in Arkansas that are legal permanent residents. The majority of them are eligible for citizenship. So then the question remains, why have they not taken that next step? And it's been our work in the community in realizing that a lot of them don't have information, how the process is, what are the requirements. They're unaware actually about the fee waivers that allow for individuals in impoverished circumstances to not even have to pay a fee to begin that process. And so we've been been working to build awareness on that, but more excitingly, we've been working to build coalitions at the local level to offer citizenship workshops so that more individuals can take advantage of the citizenship process and get into our system. And then after citizenship, obviously we're working on voter registration, and I brought voter registration forms there, so if some of you have not taken the opportunity to update your form, please do so. Voter registration deadline is on October 6th, so just a few days away. But this is also tremendously important for us in that we found, even though we were able to double and work and be part of efforts that doubled the Hispanic vote in the last election, still 80% of eligible Latinos in the state who could vote are not voting. And so we know that voter registration has to do with part of that. Education, awareness building also has to do part of that, and those are all efforts that we've been working in coalitions to try and bring awareness on. So we are working on coalition building, but we're also working on a second track of program, and that's, as I said, looking at the individuals, looking at individual immigrants and seeing how we can support them in seeing their leadership potential realized and seeing it in a new form of leadership that we like to talk about in terms of organizing and community organizing. Because again, we know that there are agencies here that are offering leadership in services, but we need leaderships that can take that to the next level in terms of trying to change our system and trying to help our system achieve this potential. So through our coalitions, we've been able to connect with a group of 24 amazing individuals who represent the communities of Jonesboro, Rogers, Springdale, Fort Smith, Little Rock, and DeQueen, Arkansas, so 6 communities. And these individuals have agreed for a year to participate in our program called Change Agents, which again, Alan referenced. And the concept of this program is that the only way you can really learn to become a leader, the only way you can really learn to become an organizer is by doing it. You can maybe take a class, take a few trainings, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean anything until you're out there and you're actually doing it. But again, as we said before, we knew that when we were asking folks to go out there and start taking leadership on issues, we couldn't be setting their issues for them. They needed to set those issues for themselves. Again, we knew that the only way we were going to excite a new generation of individuals to come forth, to stand forth, and to get involved was by taking leadership on the issues that already matter to them and already matter to their community. Again, trying to take a proactive stance with our work. And so these individuals have agreed to take on a couple trainings this year, but primarily they've been out in their communities. They did community mapping exercises to try and better understand what were the resources and opportunities in their community. They did community surveys to try and understand what were the issues of their communities, that even in of itself being an empowering action. Many immigrants have never been before asked, what are the issues that matter to you? What do you want? What do you want to see in your community? What do you hope for? These are many times issues that no one had ever presented to these individuals. And our change agents, all immigrants themselves, first or second generations, were out there doing it. Once they got this information, they've been facilitating conversations with their communities. Again, we're trying to get away from a service delivery model. We're about these individuals working with other teams of individuals, creating what Zaira knows as we call our snowflake, to try and be able to inspire other groups of folks, again, who share that common interest with them, to create a vision for what that interest is, to commit to working toward that vision, because again, it doesn't mean anything if one individual is out there saying, okay, I'm gonna do this. No, I mean, if we're talking about changing the system, it's about everybody committing to do something. And we know that people have different times and flexibilities, but the idea is that everyone commit at the level they can commit to. Maybe it's making a phone call, maybe it's connecting to another volunteer, maybe it's connecting to some resource. All of these are ways to commit and get involved. But ultimately with their communities, they were facilitating conversations around action plans. And the reason they were doing this is because as part of the program, we've asked them to actually do actions, do projects in their community this coming year. So they spent the summer building their networks, and we were grateful to introduce them to the Little Rock Network as well, because there's a lot of wonderful government agencies and nonprofits supporting groups statewide, and we wanted to make sure they were connected with them. But we also took them to meet some of their allies nationwide. We took them to Maryland and Washington, D.C. for a course of a week, where they actually got to integrate themselves into an established organization, Casa de Maryland, that has been around for 27 years doing this work, realizing that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and they have the privilege here of learning from what others have done as well. And then now they are out and working in their communities and trying to do what they can. Now, combining our interests, some of our change agents have actually taken leadership in a campaign and are leading it for us right now, which is around voter registration, voter engagement, as well as this deferred action that's allowing individuals, qualifying individuals between 16 and 30 who have been in the United States for at least 5 years to be able to apply for this temporary protection from deportation, also get work visas. So we're also building awareness and working on those issues. And it's our change agents that are very much leading these efforts on the ground now. But at the end of the day, really, these programs, they've been around for 9 months. We knew we weren't going to change Arkansas and we weren't going to change the world in 9 months, but at the same time, we've been very excited about the results that we've started to see. And really, with the coalition, starting to see some collaborations around possible conversations that could happen with the state legislature around an in-state tuition equity bill, also around a concept of a human rights commission, but then also with our programs itself in terms of citizenship. I mean, we helped 400 individuals this year start on their process of citizenship, and that involved over 35 partners that are working to continuing that work statewide. But I think at the end of the day, our biggest successes has been at the individual level with our change agents itself. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you all and reintroduce you all again to Zaira Ray and have her come and speak. Really, I think the best testament of what we do and what we achieve is from the individuals we're working with themselves. So if you all can give her applause. We know it's never easy to talk in front of audiences, and we're really proud of her and for wanting to share some of her thoughts with you all.
Hi, my name is Zaira. I go to Central High School. I'm 17. And I met Mireya through Hallie. She told me about the program, and I was like, oh, it's nice. I want to make a change in my community. I just didn't know how to start it. And it wasn't easy to, it wasn't easy to do it by myself. So I was like, well, it's good if I have a backup. And I started doing stuff with her, and I was like, I'm thankful for having her because she opened my mind, like my eyes and everybody. I didn't think people was helping us out. I didn't have hopes in the change. It was difficult for me to see something coming really soon. So I was like, since I met her, she introduced me to all these people, took me to Maryland. I was like, people is supporting us. So I want to do something. I want to make a change too. I want to help out. I don't want to just be like, just sitting down and let the other people make the change. I want to do something. And I'm trying to start a club at school. And I talked to my principal about sending in letters in Spanish. And this month, the first month, she sent the letter in Spanish. It was the calendar of the school, and she made it on Spanish. And yesterday, she stopped me in the morning. She was like, did you see my letter? I was like, yes, I saw it. And it was great that she was like happy, and I was happy because I'm making a change too. And I'm starting, it might be little, but it's gonna get bigger and bigger. And she stopped me and she was like, I made the letter in Spanish, it's just for you. And I was like, okay, that's good. And then she asked me to be on her principal's cabinet. I was like, yeah, sure. I was so happy because it's something that I'm doing, and I'm making a change at school. It might not be as big as other people, but I'm helping out. And Mireya, without her, I don't think I would have been able to done this. This program changed me a lot. I've been helping out with the voter registration forms. I've been doing all this other stuff, like whenever we went to Maryland, it was so good having that experience to know there's people in the other parts of the country that's actually interested in undocumented students, and they are willing to do something for it. I was just like, this makes my heart beat faster and makes me happy. It opens my eyes. It's just great. And I was like, I didn't think nothing like this would be, good. Sorry. I'm just thankful for everything that she done in this program.
If you want to say more, are you good? Okay. As you can see, no, and I'm grateful for Zaida. I don't think as many of our people in the program give themselves enough credit about the leaders that are within them, and really, we don't see our process as being leaders ourselves, but just helping them see the leader that are in them and walk alongside, and to see her growth. I remember the first time even public speaking, she didn't like it. She wasn't too happy with me making her do it. And to now stand here in the Clinton School, one of our most prestigious institutions in Arkansas, and to do so without fear, I don't know about you all, but I feel really darn good about the future of Arkansas with youth like her and what they're going to do. So with that, I know I've taken more time than I had expected. So just to say, you know, obviously these elections are going to have an influence on what kind of work and what the nature of our work will look like moving forward, but we're committed to Arkansas. We believe in this state. We're proud of this state. We're proud to call ourselves Arkansans, and we look forward to collaborative conversations that let us really help our state achieve our potential and help everyone that wants to get involved, everyone that want to get involved to be able to do so. So with that, I take any questions or comments that you all might have. And please know, I think Zaida as well would probably welcome some comments or questions too. And we'll both be around as well. Thank you so much.
Hi, Zaida, I'd like to give us some more information on what Seis Puentes is doing in this area.
Seis Puentes? Yeah, Six Bridges. Six Bridges? Yes. Well, it's a adult school. They give computer classes, they help out on GED, they give English classes for Hispanic people. They're trying to learn English. And, well, that's what I help out in. I volunteer so people will go and learn English, and I'm volunteering with AC4D too for the workshop for different action. And Seis Puentes, they helping out too with the voter registration forms. I'm sorry. What else they do? That's it. Yeah. That's it.
No, they're North Little Rock.
Little Rock. Yeah.
They were formerly called Butterfly Ministries. Some of you might have heard of them then. And they've now formalized themselves as a nonprofit 501c3 up there in North Little Rock that's offering services for immigrants. So it's a first very positive move and something that obviously we very readily partnered with them and work with them here on the ground and them with our change agents. So.
And they give classes for kids too.
Yes,
classes.
yes. And they do a lot of classes with children and such.
I'm just wondering, can Zaida get a loan to go to college? I mean, is there issues at all with paying for higher ed and getting in and all that?
No, in terms of undocumented students, no, undocumented students can't get loans most of the time for college. There are some private funding out there, but it is very limited. A lot of the students that are able to go to college, they go as a foreign student. Even though they went to school here, they don't get to count as in-state students. So they pay either out-of-state or foreign student fees, depending on the institution, and then from there, they're not eligible for scholarships, federally funded scholarships, or even for FAFSA and federal assistance. So really their only option is taking a class at a time when they're able to, or a couple. Some of them have been able to connect with some families or institutions, private institutions that with private funding have supported them, but that's why we believe so firmly in the DREAM Act and deferred action with the support of this, but more importantly, now for offering in-state tuition for these students so that they might have the equal opportunity. As you can imagine, that cost barrier being significant.
While the governor has been very helpful on immigration issues in the legislature, for some reason he is absolutely opposed any kind of DREAM Act here in Arkansas. He's vowed to veto any bill that offers in-state tuition to undocumented students. Even if they've lived here all their lives and have gone through the public schools, he still considers them non-residents. And they pay, if a in-state student pays $10,000 a year to go to school, the immigrant child will pay $20,000 under the current law.
Yes.
Would you please just reiterate for us what the DREAM Act is? I'm not, just the highlights of that.
No, of course.
So thank you.
And thank you for that, because there's actually two DREAM Acts, one that we can address here at the state level, and then there's the federal DREAM Act. The DREAM Act is, first and foremost, started as a federal piece of legislation, recognizing that we do have undocumented students in this country that came to this country at no fault of their own. Most of them came alongside their parents and others. Many of them actually didn't even realize they were undocumented until it came to the moment that they were applying for college, and their parents had at that time informed them that they wouldn't get the same treatment as their fellow classmates. Many of these kids actually don't even speak their native languages, or they speak English with a very strong Arkansan accent or their other native accents because they consider themselves here just as much a resident here as everyone else. But finding out of their status and such are now limited, and find out that they are limited with higher education opportunities. What this law would do is it would allow them to have a pathway to citizenship if they are studying or if they go through the military. And then with that, after many years of probation, showing good moral character, making sure to not get in trouble with the law and such, may eventually have that opportunity. And they estimate about 13 years down the road from when they would start the process to actually become citizens. And with that, have the full rights and benefits. But at least that puts them in this legal process. With this law, they would get conferred a social security number, and with that, a work permit, and obviously some key opportunities. Another challenge right now that a lot of these students have is when they do finish, if they are able to finish college, they can't work. They can't work in their intended profession because they don't have a social security number, or they also don't have a work visa, and they can't qualify for a work visa because then it would be admitting that they were in this country in an undocumented status. So they really have no option to work in their field that they prepared themselves for. And some of these have been very critical fields like nursing, like business, where we know that there's need for bilingual individuals. And then at this stage are left with some very limited career options and such. And we believe all of that puts some significant disincentives, as did our federal legislators that introduced that, believe that that put some significant disincentives that could be corrected through federal legislation. The closest that law came to getting passed was in 2010. At the end of 2010, and it only lost by a few votes. Right now, it is still pending, but obviously with the current election, no action is anticipated on it. Now, there is also what we call a State DREAM Act, and that deals with the in-state tuition piece. And the reason that there are two different acts and they are two different levels of conversations, both at the federal and state level, is because only the federal government can confer citizenship. Only the Congress can confer citizenship to somebody. And then at the state level, only the state government can decide to whom they want to give in-state tuition. So there are actual states that, despite not having a federal DREAM Act passed, at the state level, they have decided to confer in-state tuition to these students. And some states, even like the state of Illinois, have decided to create pools of private funding that they have helped organize and bring actors together to give funds to these students to replace the fact that they still can't apply for federal loans or other federal grants. So those are some of the conversations that we've been trying to have that have happened here in Arkansas. There have been efforts that have failed at the State DREAM Act, but conversations that we hope and have been supportive of continuing here at the state level in addition to the federal level. Yeah. Yeah. No, they're not either. No, when it comes to the DREAM Act, really, it's just eligibility is it's private funds. And I know one of our change agents right now, her parents are working 3 jobs each, so that she can go to the University of Arkansas Fort Smith. Let me check. I don't know if.
There's a new community organization formation. We already have 5 in the bylaws from the second state, and we partnered with the IRS to get our 501c3. It's called Centro Comunitario y Cultural Las Américas, Community Center and Cultural Center Las Américas, and we hope to be up and functioning by the end of this year. The question for you is LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, part of the coalition?
Yes, we've definitely partnered with LULAC on several of our coalitions. We're not a membership entity as of yet. That's something that we're hoping to grow into. Can actually be a formal coalition for other organizations, for voting and rights and such. But right now, to be considered a partner in our organization, it's been to collaborate, and several LULAC chapters have collaborated with us on our citizenship workshops, for example, and I know with conversations around human rights, we've had members there and such, and no, we've been very proud for all of our membership. I think statewide, we've had somewhere between 35 and 40 different organizations at different times partner with us with these different events. But in terms of coalition, there's not been a formal MOU or voting as such as some other organizations have, but it's something we definitely look forward to down the road. So thank you, and I'm available for questions afterward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mireya.
Is that all right?
Great
Okay.
job.